Hello there. You already probably saw that clickbaity title that I came up with, and don't worry, this isn't gonna be me complaining about how God of War 2018 was actually terrible and you're wrong for enjoying it. Like, no, I enjoyed it. I thought it was a really good game, but it was an open world game, which just became super common around 10 years ago for whatever reason. Like every AAA game series, even ones which weren't originally open world, just decided, hey, let's be open world. And a lot of times they decided to add in some stealth elements, and then they put in a crafting mechanic. Like it all just felt like they were kind of going after the trend which had been established. And while that's not inherently a bad thing, it did lead to a lot of things feeling samey. And God of War 2018 did do that as well. And while I did really like the combat and the main storyline of that series, I didn't quite enjoy exploring the world all that much. Like, I did it somewhat because, they had items and stuff which were kind of fun to find. But the main thing about it is that the world just felt dead, and not in in a way where it felt deliberate and like that was kind of the point, like in say Dark Souls, where the world is supposed to feel like it's dead because it is dying, but just in a way where there's no people here and it doesn't feel like anyone lived here. So let's go back to like the PS2 era. So we're talking like 20 years ago. Most open world games at that time were focused on urban environments. So stuff like Grand Theft Auto 3 or GTA Vice City or Jak 2. Like these maps are really, really small compared to modern ones. Like they were big at the time. They felt big at the time because we just hadn't really seen anything like that at the time. And another part of the reason that they felt bigger than they really were is because, well, they're urban environments, so there's a lot of stuff there, If you do it properly, there's a lot of different types of buildings, different types of, like, bridges and rivers and other things you can use as barriers. Like, different sections of a city can feel quite a bit different from one another. Like, that goes for real life as well. Poor neighborhoods feel different than rich neighborhoods, which feel different than places which are, like, on the coast versus places that are a little bit further inland, stuff like that. And most of these games did that fairly well. But for whatever reason, in this most recent generation, a lot of them were focused on like rural areas and wilderness. Now, that's not inherently bad, but it just doesn't feel lived in. A city pretty much by definition has a lot of people there, and they are all living their lives. Like there's industrial centers where they work, there's houses where they live, there's nightclubs and stuff where they go to have fun. Whereas something like, let's say Far Cry 3, that's like out in the wilderness. There's a couple of little towns and stuff, but for the most part it is just jungle island. And again, I don't hate the idea of like wilderness open worlds. Like, one of my favorite games in the Far Cry series is Far Cry Primal, which gets shit on a lot, I know, but I really enjoy it. And that one takes place in 10,000 BC, so like, yeah, there weren't any cities or anything back then. It is supposed to be wilderness, so it kind of works in that game. But in other more recent ones, it just feels like, okay, yep, there are cities and stuff, you're just not going to see any of them, and there's going to be like 3 people that live in this entire area, and you're not really going to get to talk to them or anything. It's just, yeah, you're going to wander the woods, and you're going to hunt animals and stuff, and it just feels lazy in a way. Like, you have places where this is done well, like Red Dead Redemption 2. You do have huge open areas with very few people, but you do still run into travelers on the roads, and there are still little towns, and there is a big metropolis that you can go and explore. And, you can talk to people, you can get quest lines, and you can hear about their hopes and their dreams, and so it just feels like this area is lived in, Whereas a lot of ones like, let's say, Far Cry 4, for instance, this is supposed to be an entire country, but it doesn't feel like that many people live here. Like, it feels like there's a couple of little towns which are disconnected and don't have that much personality in them because the people in them don't have that much personality. And so everything just feels dead. It feels empty. And it's even worse because there's games where everything is supposed to feel kind of dead, like, say, Fallout New Vegas, which is not just one of my favorite open world games of all time, but one of my favorite games of all time. That also has like a bunch of little settlements, which are all different from one another. They're all in different areas. They're spread out across the map, so there aren't any huge tracks where it feels like there's nothing there. You go to these areas, you can talk to the characters who all have different personalities. They all have different quests and stuff that they can give you. So it feels like, yes, this is a lived-in area. And the Vegas Strip feels a lot different than Freeside, which feels a lot different than Novak, which feels a lot different than Prim. You know, they all have their own personality. They all feel different. And God of War 2018 it's kind of the pinnacle of this problem, because wandering around this entire world, there's like no people other than Atreus and Kratos, and then you meet a couple people in the main storyline, but they don't really live in settlements. Like, you know, you have Freya, who lives in her weird turtle tree house thing, and then the other characters who live in Asgard, but other than that, it feels like this whole world is just dead. At least in Midgard in particular, it feels like there's no areas where people live. You know, you don't see really any abandoned villages to show like, oh yes, all the humans fled this area, which I believe they do mention in the game. And you don't see any villages with people that you can talk to and get quests from. Like, when you get quests, you get them from ghosts who are already dead. And so, yeah, the whole Midgard area just feels really dead. It feels like it has no history. It feels like it has no civilization there. Like, fucking Alfheim does this better, because at the very least we do see a bit of a war between the Light Elves and Dark Elves. And we do see that massive temple complex, which it seemed like people, you know, lived there and built that and stuff. So that at least solves part of the problem. But at the same time, it still doesn't, you still don't really see villages or towns or cities or anything like that. Like, and another popular game, which I did enjoy but had a similar issue, was Fallout 4. You know, you have like Diamond City, which is pretty cool. You know, it's a whole city with quests, and it's in the middle of a stadium, so it has its own history implied there, and then you can also talk to characters and learn more about it, so it deepens the lore, it makes the world feel bigger. And then there's like 2 other areas that have actual people living there, and beyond that it's just the settlements that you can create, and they're populated by just generic NPCs with no personality or anything. So, you know, it doesn't really feel like this is a lived-in world the way it did in New Vegas, and but at the very least it does feel like there are some people there, whereas God of War has none of that. And so when the Ragnarok trailer came out, which was fairly recently, I was super excited to see just the brief shot of Kratos and Atreus on a boat in the middle of what looked like a port. You know, like, it looked like there were people hanging around doing stuff, because at the very least, it'll feel like this world is lived in. And, you know, I just hope that is a lesson that a lot of open world game designers can learn after this, because I'm just kind of tired of wandering around woods, killing animals and skinning them, and then crafting stuff from their carcasses, because, I mean, if there's no... It feels like there's no point to doing it when it feels like this world is empty. You know, and I'm not saying you can't have worlds in rural or semi-rural environments. I really wish we'd get more urban environments. You know, because I just kind of miss seeing those. Like, I know Cyberpunk 2077 had that, but I didn't play that, so I don't know if it was done well or not. I don't really feel like playing Cyberpunk for a variety of reasons, but, you know, the main issue is, like, yes, I wish there were some city environments, because those, if you do it even halfway competently, feel lived in, whereas rural environments, if you don't do them very well, feel dead. Like, Red Dead Redemption 2, I mentioned, is rural environments done well, because there's still little spots of humanity. It feels like there's people living here, it just feels like there aren't a lot of them living here, and that's fine. Another good example of this would be Far Cry 5, you know? Like, you wander around that area, it feels like, yes, this is Montana, there are mountains and forests and lakes and rivers and stuff, but there are still little towns and little settlements around there, and the people who live there do talk, and they do have personalities, and you. So it feels like this is a real place. Okay, I don't want to repeat myself too much more than I already have, but God of War 2018, even though it's a fantastical world, it didn't feel like a real place, which is what it's supposed to do. Like that's the whole point of having an open world, is to immerse yourself in it and explore and feel like you're in a real place. And that's what makes them fun. And sometimes it's just fun to go around and cause mayhem and destruction and get up to 5-star wanted ratings. Other times it's fun to help out townsfolk and do quests and help grannies cross the street. And a lot of this helps to make the main storyline better as well. Like, if it feels like a real world, you're going to want to help to save it. If it doesn't feel like a real world, you're not going to give a shit. And I've rambled too much. I don't feel like talking anymore.